Hi everyone, I'm Carol Ann Riddell and welcome to Arts in the City. First up, the beloved doll Barbie has had a huge impact on and off toy shelves. Career trailblazer, fashion icon, cultural ambassador. Our Donna Hanover takes us through 65 years of Barbie.
Beautiful girl, beautiful girl, beautiful girl.
She burst on the scene in 1959 in her black and white striped swimsuit, and Barbie evolved into way more than a doll. According to an exhibit at the Museum of Arts and Design, she's a cultural icon created by the woman who co-founded the Mattel toy company.
Ruth Handler was a dynamo woman, and she lived in a man's world.
Barbara Paris Gifford, a senior curator at the museum, says Ruth thought there should be something besides baby dolls for girls to play with.
She went to Hamburg, and she saw a doll there named Lily. And Lily had breasts. They launched a doll that looked very similar.
Ruth wanted her to wear grown-up fashions like the first 22 outfits.
Barbie is out on the town. She's doing different things. Maybe she's commuting to work. Maybe she's sitting in business meetings like Ruth Handler did. She saw the ability of girls to dream about things that they could become, to have careers.
At first, it didn't go well for Barbie.
And when she launched, she was horribly unpopular. Nobody, and this is among toy executives, nobody wanted this doll with breasts. In fact, they thought it was a little bit scandalous. But Ruth decided, we're gonna launch it on the Mickey Mouse Club. And so they did an ad directly to children on the Mickey Mouse Club, and she went through the roof.
In the decades since, Barbie's had more than 250 careers.
I really like this showing of the 1960s. You see a nurse, and then you see a student teacher. But you see something really aspirational as well, and that is Miss Astronaut. This is 1965, and Barbie's going to the moon way before July 20th, 1969.
So Barbie went to the moon before Neil Armstrong did?
Yes, she did.
As for Barbie's love life, Ken arrives in 1961.
Ken comes about and he only has 2 outfits. That would be a bathing suit, because you've got to be able to go swimming, and a tuxedo, because Barbie needed to be escorted.
And Barbie herself really changes in 1971.
And Malibu Barbie's got a lot of hair, it's parted down the side, she's tan, she's looking straight forward.
Wasn't the original Barbie looking straight forward?
No, the original Barbie was sort of looking to the side.
Another big change, there had been black dolls who were Barbie's friend, like Christy, but in 1980, the first black doll named Barbie arrives, as does the first Hispanic Barbie. And in about 2017, a whole line of Barbies with adaptive designs like wheelchairs, as well as Barbies with many different body types and skin tones, come on the scene. The 1980s Dynasty era, with the motto, "More is more," was big for Barbie.
So we have this outfit here that is representative of Yves Saint Laurent Rive Gauche. And then this outfit, which is in homage, if you will, to Ungaro. We see this horizontal pleating. We see this big sort of wrap that brings in those shoulders. And it's a special moment in fashion, because what's coming down the pike is the prevalence of street style. So you see here jogging suits, for example, turning into outfits, a lot of jeans. So it's a point where fashion designers are actually looking to the street to figure out what they're going to put down the runway.
That connection to real fashion was important to the original curator, Karen Fetter, and to the owner of most of the dolls and their clothes, David Porcello.
By the 2000s, we have a really different situation with Barbie. Fashion designers have grown up with her, and they've been inspired by her. She was their first client. They would dress her when they were like little kids. And we see that very clearly with Jeremy Scott and Moschino. These were Barbie's outfits, and he saw them and he thought, I'm gonna make them life-size and put them down the runway.
The exhibit was planned before the Barbie movie, directed by Greta Gerwig, starring Margot Robbie with Ryan Gosling as Ken. But the film has definitely hyped interest. Visitors to the exhibit love posing as Barbie. There was a point when little girls, including my daughter, loved their my-size Barbie dolls. I like the my-size Barbie car. It's based on the 1980s version that Barbie drove herself, and it represents her being sporty, maybe a bit of a fast driver, and independent. The exhibit is open through March 16th. I'm Donna Hanover for Arts in the City.
They say home is where the heart is, but a new exhibit at the Cooper Hewitt Smithsonian Design Museum is expanding that definition with a look at what home means both physically and emotionally. Our Andrew Falzone has more.
Spanning the entirety of the museum's exhibition space, the triennial exhibit at Cooper Hewitt entitled Making Home occupies its full 17,000 square feet. With a range of installations that are meant to be experienced as much as seen, Making Home challenges and expands on the idea that's central to the human experience. It's a collaboration of 3 Cooper Hewitt co-curators.
Triennial and biennial exhibitions are intended to be contemporary surveys, right? Whether they're focused on art or design, they're trying to take the temperature of what's going on in the world and share the perspectives of artists and designers on these topics.
We really worked to not make it feel like a conventional museum exhibition. You're really meant to walk into a space and feel like you're stepping into a brand new world.
While Cooper Hewitt focuses on design, Making Home is not trying to reinvent the fork or plan the perfect kitchen. It's an interpretation of home that's more often figurative than it is literal. As an example, the piece Welcome to Territory, 3 capes crafted exquisitely from turkey feathers heroically hover overhead. Created by Lenape artist Joe Baker, the capes are traditional attire of the indigenous people who inhabited New York long before European settlers. While it's the first piece you see inside the museum, the first piece of the exhibition greets you curbside.
The exhibition begins outside on 91st Street with the 3 structures designed by Lavon Bell. You'll see these structures with vernacular architecture, very intricate fretwork. I think the passerby will find them compelling and will probably want to say, I want to know about those, not just that, but what's happening inside of the space.
Halau Kukulu Hawaii represents an indigenous Hawaiian structure highlighting native lashing techniques which are used in place of metal fasteners. Unruly Subjects examines the Smithsonian as a home for Puerto Rican cultural heritage, displaying objects made from materials that have been integral to the archipelago's inhabitants for centuries. Elsewhere in the museum, an unexpected take on where home is comes from bio-artist Heather Dewey Hagborg.
Can our bodies have homes outside of our bodies? And she's explored the idea of homes for our DNA in biobanks and what happens when a blood sample or a tissue sample is taken at a routine doctor's visit. Where does that go? What happens to it? Do you have access to a part of your body that is living someplace else?
Unlike most art exhibits, which are limited to observation, the Making Home Triennial encourages participation, like here at the Offering, where you can sit alongside the table and feel like you're part of the family.
It's almost like an altar. The table is set, laid out for families that may have been migrating from the south to the north in the Great Migration. It's supposed to be really a moment of respite. A moment to sit back and reflect on the ways people have sometimes taken objects like a cup or a photo or a Bible is in one of the cases, and what it has meant to be able to kind of bring a piece of home with you.
Also on display, so that you all won't forget, is composed of 250 pounds of dried tobacco leaves, the aroma of which overwhelms the viewer, making the exhibit as much about smell as it is about sight. To the left, the work includes a painted, quilted canvas by the artist's mother. To the right, a creative use of artificial intelligence.
In Hackett's case, he's looking at Black life kind of retrospectively and thinking about how artificial intelligence imagery, the words that he gives as prompts, can create these kind of nostalgic scenes that maybe African Americans would have wanted to experience but never got to.
If you want to check out Cooper Hewitt's design triennial Making Home, it's on display until August 10th. I'm Andrew Falzone for Arts in the City.
You might know the legendary actor Richard Kind from his many roles in TV and film, or you might recognize his voice from some of your favorite animated characters. Our Neil Rosen spoke to Richard about his prolific career and his new play on Broadway.
You embarrass me in front of my friends? You turn me into your butler? You send me to the track and tell me to put my paycheck on a horse named Slowpoke?
Versatile character actor Richard Kind has an amazing career that spanned over 40 years on stage, screen, and television.
Oh my God! Is there no end to your madness?
He's well known to audiences for such memorable TV roles in such shows as Spin City and Curb Your Enthusiasm.
Are you out of your mind? If you go to Florida, you're not gonna call Aunt Chad? Not necessarily!
His movie roles include such diverse films as Clifford, Stargate, and the Oscar-winning film Argo. Plus, his recognizable voice can be heard in numerous animated films, like Inside Out.
I'm mostly cotton candy, but shape-wise, I'm part cat, part elephant, part dolphin.
He's also a familiar face on Broadway, having appeared in many notable productions. In the process, he's won a Drama Desk Award and received a Tony nomination for his work in the play The Big Knife. His latest play, currently on Broadway, is the comedy All In, which features a rotating all-star cast that includes such notables as John Mulaney, Fred Armisen, Lin-Manuel Miranda, Chloe Fineman, and Hank Azaria, just to name a few. Although I've seen it and I love it, it's hilarious, as I told you before we started rolling, just really intelligent theater. Tell my audience about All In, what it is.
There is a writer, a great writer by the name of Simon Rich, who has a history of writing TV shows, head writer at Saturday Night Live, and he wrote actually 10 books. That's a collection of essays and columns and short stories. A lot of them were printed in the New Yorker, and we've taken about 5 or 6 of them, and we read them, and we read them aloud, and it's some of the funniest people are doing the reading, and that's what it is, and it's very, very funny.
Everybody up there pretty much reads the play. Was there ever any talk about memorizing it?
No, I think right from the get-go, it was going to be like a reading the first time that you get together for a play and you read it. Now, the more we do it, the more familiar we are with it. I purposefully look at the book, even when I know all the lines, because I want to make it seem like a reading. We've been given binders with the script. There's a reason for it. So let's read it. That's what we're doing. These are pieces that were written down. Some of the people are coming in for a week at a time. Some are coming in for 3 weeks. I think what they do in order to get celebrities and to get good people, they don't want to make this seem like so hard so that you have to memorize it. They want you to come on in, like love letters, like the vagina monologues, have a rotating cast, different people coming in. But in order to do a decent job, we're not at a podium, we're sitting in chairs. To me, that's more difficult too. I like to be up. I got a lot of energy. As it turns out, I use the chair as a device to get laughs. But a podium is how I'm used to reading stories.
Is it gratifying to do it? Because are you enjoying the laughs, and do you enjoy doing comedy stuff?
Of course, I enjoy the comedy stuff. It's what I'm known for on TV. As far as this, is it gratifying? A lot of the tickets are being sold because of the fame of John Mulaney. Let's just say, I mean, he fills auditoriums. I love John Mulaney. So when he introduces me, they're screaming. They're excited to be there. Is this gratifying? Yeah. Effing yeah. It's great.
Do you prefer, you've done voiceovers in cartoons, TV, movies, stage work.
Is there one that I prefer?
Yes, exactly.
I do prefer theater. I've always preferred theater. but I don't like long runs. That's why this is perfect. I'm doing this till mid-January, so that's a good run for me. I like doing all different kinds of roles.
What's next for you after All In?
First of all, I'm going to be doing these things now, doing these Q&As. They get a moderator, and I'm putting together like 10 minutes, just sort of retrospective of what I've done. Then there's a Q&A. I hope it'll be fun. I hope it'll be fun for the audience.
With Richard Kind for Arts in the City, I'm Neil Rosen.
In many ways, modern navigation systems have replaced lighthouses as tools for safety at sea. But before those lights fade, a museum on Staten Island is dedicated to preserving and sharing the history of these iconic structures. The Lonely Lighthouse, a steadfast guide through stormy seas. These windswept and isolated towers have long captured our collective imagination. But lighthouses also shaped our economic backbone. Linda Dianto, executive director of the National Lighthouse Museum, explains.
George Washington actually, in his Lighthouses Act of 1789, created the need for more lighthouses. He had to build more lighthouses. He felt that to build the economy of the United States, at that time it wasn't the United States, but to build that economy, you needed to build more lighthouses to allow the ships to get into harbor.
The museum in St. George, Staten Island represents a piece of history itself. It's located on the former site of the U.S. Lighthouse Service General Depot, a worldwide testing ground for wicks and fuels and supply distribution center for lighthouses from 1864 to 1939. Inside, you will find all things lighthouse, from equipment and a detailed timeline to remarkable stories of individual lighthouse keepers, like Kate Walker of Robbins Reef Lighthouse, who took over after her husband became ill and asked her to mind the light.
So he got sick, and her son rode him to Staten Island, to the shores here, to the hospital. And as he was leaving, I think he knew he had pneumonia, and he knew he wouldn't be back. So he said, "Kate, mind the light." And he never returned. She stayed with the light. Her children grew up there, and the day her husband died, she went back to work. Kate also saved a lot of people too. She saved a whole bunch of people, and she also saved a little dog. So when ships went, there were people, they were caught on the rocks, they had to get them off the boats and into the lighthouse. So she always kept a pot of tea, hot water to make tea on, because she never knew who was going to land at her doorstep in the middle of the water.
The museum also features Willis Augustus Hodges, an abolitionist and the first African-American lighthouse keeper at Cape Henry Lighthouse. You'll also see dozens of model lighthouses and a section that explains how the light itself evolved with what's known as the Fresnel lens.
It made a big change because now you could beam that light further. Okay, you were able to see it from a longer distance, so captains of ships were able to see that they're heading to land. So it's not only about crashing, but it's also you're heading in the right direction.
And while we associate light with electricity, early lighthouse keepers didn't have that luxury.
And in the beginning, they used whale oil. Now, whale oil was expensive, but it also burned black. So at the end of a night with whale oil, you had all these lenses here, all these little pieces of glass, prisms, were all covered in black soot. So the job of a light keeper was to clean that soot off. So he had a little kit that he would haul to the top of the lighthouse, and he'd have to wipe down every prism every morning to be ready for the night.
The museum is now in the midst of an effort to expand its footprint, a plan to keep the light on for future generations.
We're saving history here. Without lighthouses, we couldn't have built the trade that we did worldwide. It wouldn't have happened.
A new play on Broadway examines what happens when vaccine skepticism collides with progressive politics. Patrick Pacheco, host of Theater All the Moving Parts, chats with the playwright and stars of Eureka Day.
In Eureka Day, playwright Jonathan Spector's critically acclaimed comedy, we're dropped into board meetings at the elite and progressive Eureka Day School in Berkeley, California. But when a mumps outbreak hits this liberal oasis, the heretofore polite and PC 5-member board has to figure out what to do about it. They fail miserably as the vaxxers square off against the anti-vaxxers.
What we'd be saying is, I'm not willing to subject my child to even the tiniest amount of risk so that we can protect people's elderly parents with cancer or a newborn baby sibling. I mean, is that really the kind of community you want to be a part of?
Tony Award winner Bill Irwin and Tony nominee Jessica Hecht lead the cast. Irwin plays Dawn, the head of the school and a compassionate, if flummoxed, leader. Hecht plays Suzanne, a wealthy, devoted Berkeley mother who's made this progressive school her second family. Welcome, Bill. Welcome, Jessica. And welcome, Jonathan, joining us over Zoom. Jonathan, when you started to embark on writing this play, did you find that the wokeness among the 5-member board, the 5 characters that you wrote so beautifully, was ripe for satire?
I started working on the play initially in 2016. It's really about people who are really committed to trying to live in a sort of thoughtful and an intentional way, and then, you know, the way that collides with a situation that makes that difficult for everyone.
Bill, you were born in California. You're a Californian, and you spent some time in Northern California?
Yes, I did, both as a Californian and as a school administrator and as a veteran of the 60s and 70s. Yeah, it was a mirror to a certain extent in that role.
For Jessica Hecht, playing Suzanne meant exploring the complexities of good intentions.
I feel like her desperation to be in an environment where children are happy, that motivates everything. So the fact that she's in some way protecting this idealistic nest is where she gets into a little bit of trouble. I'm giving so much of her failure. She's actually been wildly successful.
The play's centerpiece is a scene that has audiences howling with recognition. At a live-streamed board meeting, parents are invited to log on, and their comments, which quickly devolve into rancor and insults, are projected against the back wall of the set.
Are they the only answer? Are they the best answer? For me, that I'm not so sure about.
You just mean that it's one thing if
The people in the room are trying to have a good faith conversation, even if it gets difficult at times, and that the kind of vitriol that people unleash each other online, even those people would never do that if they were in the room
Absolutely.
with the other people. There's something about the dehumanizing nature of communicating, with a screen that sort of allows us to be vicious in a way we wouldn't be.
Since Dr. Jonas Salk's polio vaccine was approved in 1955, Americans trusted vaccines almost universally. But in recent years, that trust has eroded. In the process of writing this play, given the polarization that we're witnessing now, and given the intractability of reaching consensus, does this make you hopeful that we can ever communicate, reach a place where we do look for the common good while taking care of the minority?
I think it's an illusion to hold on the idea that we have some place that we're trying to get to, and then we'll get to that place and we will just stay there for, in perpetuity once we have achieved a certain kind of enlightenment as a society. I think it's always a struggle, and it's always a process of sort of trying to move towards the thing that you want to become as a society.
And if you look at this play, does it make it more difficult to love this country or easier to love this country?
This is such an interesting time because I'm an old timer. I love this. I love my people. I love the dirt of this country. So it's like the play itself. It's full of huge, possibly unanswerable questions.
my therapist says life is one long cost-benefit analysis.
You need to get a new therapist.
To hear more from our discussion about Eureka Day, be sure to watch the full episode of Theater All the Moving Parts. I'm Patrick Pacheco.
A groundbreaking exhibit at the New York Historical examines 200 years of the everyday clothing of ordinary women. Our extraordinary intern, Brittany Franco, takes us on a tour.
From corsets and house dresses to pantsuits and tees, 2 centuries of history stitched together, one garment at a time. The New York Historical's exhibit, Real Clothes, Real Lives, 200 Years of What Women Wore, the Smith College Historic Clothing Collection, invites viewers to explore the lives of everyday women through fashion marked by the passage of time. We spoke with the Associate Director of the Center for Women's History and co-curator of the exhibition, Anna Danziger Halperin, who explains why these garments are essential to understanding the women who wore them.
They're not your usual kinds of historical objects that you might think of. They're everyday clothing, but we can use them to look back at women's history and see what women's lives were like in the past.
Each stain and stitch gives a glimpse into the style of the time, along with stories of struggle and change. Here, fashion is more than fabric. The exhibit's 5 sections, home, public dress, service, pushing boundaries, and rites of passage, trace how women's roles across race and class have changed and evolved dramatically over time. In home, all work, no pay, visitors can see how domestic labor dominated women's lives.
All of that labor to take care of a home, to feed families, to do the laundry, to mend clothing, it was incredibly time-consuming, incredibly laborious, and often unpaid labor.
One invention in particular revolutionized clothing and helped make women's lives a bit easier. The sewing machine's introduction in the 1850s saved women loads of time. No longer did they have to constantly make and mend clothing for their families by hand. Another section, service, displays the uniforms of caretakers, waitresses, and more from the 20th century.
For World War I, we have an ambulance driver's uniform. It's much softer, it's much more practical for doing that kind of work, which is for the first time really socially acceptable. Yet she's still wearing a skirt. I think that's fascinating, right?
But before wartime, societal rules strictly dictated how women should appear outside the home.
They had to cover their hair with a hat. They had to cover their hands with gloves. Once hemlines began to rise in the 20th century, they had to cover their legs in stockings. So that's one thing, that in order for women to go out of the home and be respectable, they had to keep parts of their bodies covered.
Unlike other exhibits, most of the items in Real Clothes, Real Lives aren't flashy or fancy. They have holes, are faded, missing buttons, you name it. The rawness of Real Clothes, Real Lives shows us just how impactful technology and history have influenced women's lives over the past 200 years, and how it's still changing to this day.
I think there's something about this show that's really empowering, that says, everyday people are worthy of being in a museum and having their stories told.
In addition to everyday clothes women wore, you can find some unusual, not-so-everyday pieces, like the aluminum pull-tab vest made from the tops of cans. The vest and the rest of the exhibition will be on display until June 22nd. I'm Brittany Franco for Arts in the City.
That is our show for today. Thanks so much for joining us. A quick reminder to check us out on our new CUNY TV app and on social media. We'd love to hear from you. I'm Carol Ann Riddell. See you next time on Arts in the City.